Sometimes the scariest stories don't happen in horror movies. They happen in real life. On Reddit, people share their personal experiences where a simple crush, a new acquaintance, or even a random encounter turned into a real-life nightmare. Today, we're going to look at several stories about stalkers that will make you check twice to make sure your doors are locked. Our first story about what crazy love really is. My first serious boyfriend stalked me for about 5 years after I broke up with him. The reason I broke up with him is because I noticed him becoming increasingly possessive and controlling. This worried me a lot, and I was really young. He was older than me, so I decided to get out. The breakup itself was so brutal. He cried and screamed and begged. Initially, after the breakup, his behavior seemed like the harmless actions of a bitter ex. Constant texting and phone calls, sending gifts to my workplace, that sort of thing. After about 6 months, when this hadn't died down, I started bumping into him on my way home from work, or if I was out shopping, so I ended up moving. I couldn't leave my job immediately, but moving house didn't make a difference anyway. This behavior continued for a few years. His behavior became increasingly worse. I'd rather not go into detail, and the police were very reluctant to do anything. I moved every 6 to 9 months and changed jobs twice, but somehow he always managed to track me down. I didn't use social media, and even insisted friends of mine not take any pictures of me in case they posted them on social media. I kept my phone number within my circle of friends, but somehow he always managed to get my new number. I ended up a paranoid wreck, thinking that one of my friends had betrayed me, or that my phone company had me listed in a phone book, and all others kinds of crazy thoughts. Then another year passed, and as our encounters got worse, again, I'd rather not go into detail, I decided to report him to the police again, and this time they took some action. At this stage I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't concentrate at work. I was a shell. About 2 months after I reported him to the police, I woke up one morning to a story in the newspapers about staff in the National Tax Office using resources improperly. My ex was the main perpetrator, using his job to access all of my information. In his job, he had access to my tax records, which meant every time I changed job, address, or phone number, he had access to the most up-to-date information. Before the court case began, he committed suicide, and I'm not ashamed to say I cried with relief. They were the worst years of my adult life. Now let's move on to the second story. When I was about 19, I met this guy who worked at the subway near where I worked. He was a nice enough guy, and he took me out on a date. Everything started off really well, but about a week into it, he started asking me for money. It started off small at first, like for a soda or $5 for gas. Then he started asking for larger amounts, like a few hundred, to get him by for a week or so. I never gave it to him, but he started wanting to move in together within about 2 weeks of dating. When we would go out places, he started to do very weird things. He would start screaming in public or singing nonsense at the top of his lungs. He would always play around afterward that he was just having fun, but it was weird and embarrassing to be seen with him. Also, my dog, who loves everyone, would not let him near me. I've never seen that dog so much as growl at another person, but he would try and bite the shit out of him when he came close to me. By the end of the second week, I broke up with him over the phone. I normally didn't do that, but at the time his erratic behavior made me nervous. He completely flipped the freak out. He started showing up where I worked, to the point where my manager had to ban him from the building, and coworkers walked me to my car. He would show up literally everywhere I was, even to the grocery store or the gas station. I started getting text messages and weird email about how we were meant to be, and he couldn't live without me, and such. Then one day he showed up in the middle of the night and told me to come outside. I told him to leave or I was going to the cops. He literally started sobbing, to the point where he was almost hyperventilating. I went back inside and locked the house up. The next day I was home alone and just doing some work. At the time I was in college, when I heard some rustling by the front door. I thought it was just the dog messing around or the mailman or something, but the dog started barking and growling. The doorbell began to ring. I didn't think much of it, probably just a solicitor. Someone started messing with the door handle. I grabbed a broom of all things, because that was all I had, and I heard someone open the door. My dog tried to bite him, and I locked myself in my bathroom and started screaming that I called the police. He up and ran away. I called my neighbor who lived across the street from me and was former military. He checked out the house and made sure he was gone. My dog had a few scrapes and cuts on him, but he was okay. I filed for a restraining order the next day, and my dad took the liberty of calling his father and explaining what happened. I received a few other emails him following that, but he never came to my house again. Luckily, I've moved a few hours away, and I'm married now, but it was still very frightening at the time considering this was only about a 3-week period. Our third story is crazy, but it is just show us how insane people can be. I worked at a convenience store. There is also a halfway house full of medicated, unstable, psycho people around the corner from where I live, so they often come into the store. I was 17 when this all happened. There was this one woman who from afar seemed normal, but up close, something was off. Her makeup was a bit weird. She would wear bright red lipstick, sometimes yellow or bright pink, and always a bit messy. She always wore the same thing and walked around like she was slightly confused. I remember the first time she entered the store. She bought a 30-cent pack of gum with a $10 bill. As I was giving her change, she stared at me in a very creepy way. She didn't blink. She complimented me, "You're so pretty and beautiful. I want to be like you," with an eerie grin. "Haha, thanks. Here is your change." Then she said, "You know I have $1 million. I'm also going to marry Ryan Seacrest, and we're going to live on a big house on the moon. I would tell you where I hid my $1 million, but I have the power to not tell you." She also said many more wacky things similar to this. Okay. And off she went. I figure, oh, it's just one of the schizophrenic people from around the corner. They never cause any harm. She began frequenting the store much more. She would enter with a silent smile, walk around the store without breaking eye contact, and leave in silence. Just went in just to stare. I told my friends about her, and they agreed she was freaking creepy. So I started carrying around pepper spray just in case. Then she began to actively stalk. I would be walking my dog, and she'd be staring at me from behind a car. I would be sitting on my balcony, and she'd shout, "Hey, Thought Factory, you look so pretty today." I would be walking down a store aisle, and she would be behind a rack, giggling and whispering to herself. I'd turn around and she'd run away. I had it up to here. There were also a few other places where she ran into me. Why the freak is she stalking me? The final straw was when she broke into my house a few days later, and I have webcam footage of this. I was ready to take a shower on night when I heard the front door open from all the way in my room. I heard a faint, "Oh, so this is Thought Factory's house." I freaked out. I turned my laptop webcam on for evidence in case anything went down, and stood over by my phone. I was panicking. I ask, "What are you doing here?" And she asks, "I wanted to see if you were in here. Do you have a phone I could borrow?" "Go use the one outside." "I don't have enough money. It's only like 35 cents. "I don't have 35 cents. "Yeah, well, you can't be in here, so go." She turns around and I stand there watching her as she leaves. I hear some rustling by my door. I run over and I see her stuffing some of my family's dirty laundry clothes into her shirt. "Leave that alone. That is not yours." She dumps it out with the quickness and runs out the door. I called the police on her, and she never stalked me again. The last night I saw her, she was giving a homeless guy a blowjob outside of my window, around 2 a.m., while his homeless friends watched and jerked off. Let's continue with our fourth story. My mother had just gotten a divorce with my stepfather. She was desperate and had signed up for a well-known dating website. She met a dude who I instantly started to like. He had a PS3, which was awesome, because I had wanted one since they came out. He was also a computer repair guy, so that was pretty amazing to a 14-year-old me. My mother and him go on a date, and everything goes well, and Mom plans on seeing him again. But he shows up to her work. She was a special education teacher at the time, and it was preschoolers through 5th graders who were all pretty nervous just being at school, let alone a random guy just prancing in through the door that none of them knew. My mom was out when he showed up, leaving the room to her coworker, and the principal came to speak to them both, while my mother wasn't there but her boyfriend was. She got chewed out by the principal, and my mother was understandably upset, so she ended the relationship because she felt that he would be clingy, taking they weren't even official, and he was already showing up to her workplace unannounced. This is when it got scary. The kitchen at our old house had a window right above the tap. I was an anxious kid, so I would have Mom close that window at night in fear of someone staring in if I ever got up at night. She would always dismiss my pleas as just paranoid child imagination, because I had been doing it my whole life, and she was tired since I was now 14. One weekend while I was at my father's house, which is a town up the road, she got up in the middle of the night to get a drink of water. The man was looking through the window into the kitchen and waited on the back porch. Thankfully, the house was dark enough that the man couldn't see in, and my mom was unnoticed. My mom went and got the phone to call the cops, but by the time she got back, he was already gone. Until we moved out of the house, her nightly routine was to close the window blinds, and she locked all the doors. Our next story shows that karma, not just a word. My stalker ex leaked pictures of me in my underwear, but that scarily is not the craziest thing he did to me. One time I was home alone, and I used to rarely lock the door. I lived with my mother at the time, so I went for a shower completely unaware that I was in danger. I finished with my shower when I noticed a presence. Someone was under my bed. I knew that I didn't have time to run to the bathroom. I picked up the phone and called the police. Luckily, the operator knew I wasn't pranking her, and acted like I am calling my mom, so he wouldn't know I am calling the police and do something crazy, and so he'd think I won't be alone anymore. "Mom, are you close? I might need you to pick something up." "Ma'am, you have contacted the wrong person." "Mom," I asked, "are you close? I need help with something." "Ma'am, are you unable to talk but need help?" "Yes, Mom. Can you tell me your address?" "You'll need to put your name and address on the envelope, Mom." "Thank you, ma'am. I'll send help immediately." The second I put down the phone, he got from under the bed. I tried to not show him I was scared of him. "We need to talk, in the wake of chaos. Look, I don't want to disturb you, but did you get my letter?" "Yes. I need some time to think about it. Would you like some tea?" I forced a smile and willed the police to come quicker in my head. Sure enough, someone knocked on my door. When I opened the door, I couldn't stop my tears and barely stopped myself from hugging the police officers. I explained to them the situation while my ex claimed I was lying. They searched him and found a knife concealed in his pocket and a Beretta, so they charged him with carrying a weapon he didn't have a license for and trespassing. He did some time in state prison, and now I have a restraining order against him. I never go to sleep before I check under the bed and make sure every door is locked. Our story number 6 is the most scariest for me. It only went on for a couple of weeks, but it was extremely scary and unnerving. I haven't talked about this much, especially not in great detail, but here goes. Let me preface this by saying that this was a very rough time in my life. My dad had died recently, and along with being completely heartbroken, I lost my financial security. I was in college and working 2 jobs and still couldn't afford my bills. My older brother had just moved across the country, and my other one was kind of a jerk and wasn't helping me out. I had just left my boyfriend of 6 years too, so I was left with the house full of stuff, the rental payments which I couldn't afford, and the most stress I've ever had in my life. I was drinking a lot, barely eating, and not in a healthy mental state. I had a neighbor friend, let's call him Lewis, who I occasionally called when I got locked out or needed a bug killed or something. He was good friends with my ex, and I trusted him. So this dude's grandma dies, and he's upset. He asks if he can come by and hang out for a bit because he knows I went through loss recently, and he wants to just talk and drink to her. He brings a large bottle of my favorite wine, and we have a glass, and another, and another. Like I said, I was drinking a lot at that time and could hold my alcohol pretty well, so I honestly don't know if he slipped something into my drink or if I really just drank that much. But the rest I only remember in bits and pieces. He hit on me. I politely declined. He kept pushing. Then he was kissing me. Somehow I was naked. I might add that the guy I was currently seeing and I used to have rough sex, so I remember at a few points being kind of confused and allowing it, and then my head would clear a bit, and I'd tell him to get off and get out of my house. He'd keep pushing and telling me I was into it, and he'd try again. Finally, I kicked him out. A few minutes later, he rang the bell and I answered it. He told me he just needed something, he left, and in my stupid haze, I let him back in, and repeat. I kicked him back out and got in the shower. Felt so gross and disoriented. Apparently, I had forgotten to lock it because suddenly he was in the shower with me. I don't remember much more, but I finally got him out and went to sleep. It was extremely disorienting and horrifying. It wasn't exactly, I don't want to say loud this words, but you understand, but it was a huge violation and betrayal of my trust. He tried to come to my house all the time in the weeks following. Of course, I never let him in at this point, but he kept trying. He insisted he hadn't done anything wrong, and I honestly think he just wanted the reassurance and validation that he didn't do anything bad. He also was somehow convinced that I was just playing hard to get and that I actually had a thing for him, which I honestly had never had. He just would not freaking take no for an answer. He would just appear out of nowhere. I am a nudist at home, and I had large trees covering the windows in my front room, so one day I was just hanging naked on the couch reading, and dude just appears in the window, who knows how long he had been there, and asks me to let him in. He's convinced I was naked so he could see me? I told a few friends, but I guess I played it down a bit, and no one took it very seriously, so I never called the cops. Wish I had. I'm older, wiser and stronger now, and that shit just would not fly. I do remember my friend's gasp when I showed her the giant bruises up and down my arms from the struggle. This was one of the factors leading to my hasty move across the country. Just everything was terrible and I had to get out, and I had to get away from this guy. I moved within weeks. I did meet him once in a public place after, because he swore if I talked to him once he would leave me alone. He was still trying to convince me that I wanted him, and that he hadn't done anything wrong. I got pissed and showed him the bruises on my arms. He showed me the bruises, bite and scratch marks on his own arms. I didn't know what to say. I guess at the time I thought maybe I was the perpetrator as much as he was. The whole thing was so hazy and confused in my mind, and like I said, none of my friends who I told really made a huge deal about it. But looking back, it's so obvious that that was even more evidence of his wrongdoing. So yeah, he only really stalked me for a few weeks before I moved, but it was definitely one of the more frightening and depressing periods of my life. And our last story for today, I don't know if what an ex of mine did could be considered as stalking, since as far as I know, he never physically followed me anywhere or covertly watched me. But he definitely harassed me, and a friend of mine as well, since would text her phone with threatening messages meant for me. So I break up with this crazy, mentally unstable idiot after dating him for a few months. Background story here is just too long, and I don't feel like spending 2 hours typing it all out, but basically this dude was a compulsive liar, had a temper when he drank, and he drank often, was so clingy, blamed everyone else for his problems, and while dating him, I found out he was a registered sex offender in another state and had served time in a federal prison for it. 14 to 16 years. I have never met such a mentally ill person in my life, and I too suffer a mental illness. I thought I was bad, until I met him. First thing that happened when I broke up with him was I received a PM on Facebook, allegedly, from his baby mama. Yes, he had a young daughter. I say allegedly because, although the baby mama was real, I don't believe it was she that sent me the message. I firmly believe it was him pretending to be her. So, his baby mama messages me and tells me that he was in the hospital that very moment, where doctors are working tirelessly to save his life, because he tried to commit suicide by slitting his wrists. He wanted to die because I broke up with him. I immediately saw through his bullshit, but didn't call him out right away. When she eventually wrote me later that day saying the doctors were successful, I asked her to send me pictures of him in his hospital bed. I know it sounds insensitive, but I strongly believed none of this was true. Of course, she gets upset at my request and refused to send a picture. So I then ask for the name of the hospital's phone number, and his room number. I got nothing. I tell her this was an obvious attempt to emotionally blackmail me, to guilt me into taking him back. Said if he was going to finish himself, then he should just do it. I wasn't responsible for his actions. A few weeks later, I get a PM message from him on Facebook despite blocking him. He had created another profile. In the message, and in several of his statuses, he accused me of cheating on him when we were together. FYI, every one of his past girlfriends had cheated on him according to him. That wasn't true. He said the guy I cheated on him with was named Scott. I didn't even know a Scott. He also said he spoke with several of my neighbors that confirmed seeing me with another man. So not true. He never spoke with a single one of my neighbors, and my neighbors never saw me with another man because there was no other man. I block him, again, and every other new profile he'd create. I eventually made it so it was difficult to find me on Facebook, that only friends of friends could send me friend requests, and only people on my friends list can send me messages. So because of that, he began texting a friend of mine. I'll admit, these text messages made me a little uneasy, but overall, they were just annoying. And before I go on to tell you what they said, you must know that one of the numerous shit he loved lying about was that he was originally from Northern Ireland, had the accent and everything, and that before he moved to the US, he was a member of the IRAO, and that twice he committed suicide again. Would again pretend to be a friend informing me of the sad news. The third time he tried this, yes, this idiot tried to convince me 3 times that he finished himself. He pretended to be one of his IRA buddies. This IRA friend of his was sending text messages to my friend's phone, threatening to finish me, that I need to watch my back because they were going to fly over, find me. An eye for an eye. After several similar text messages, oh, and while this was going on, my mom spotted him in town a few times. Like I said, he was and still is an idiot. I got fed up and called the police. The officer I spoke with told me he'd drive over and have a chat with him. He did, and the harassment stopped. I thought it was over. Nope. A month or 2 later, my friend gets a text once again from a member of the IRA there, taking to finish me. I again called the police, and they again sent an officer to his home to speak to him. I also spoke with my apartment's building manager, and they banned him from stepping foot on the complex property. Even though he never came around, I still wanted this done. The very last time I ever heard from him was nearly a year later. He was able to message me again on Facebook. I had begun dating someone else at some point, and he mentioned that in his message. It wasn't a threatening message, just I hope your new man treats you right and that you are happy. I would love it if we could be friends, but understand if you don't want to. Blah blah blah. I deleted it right after reading it. Several months later, I found out he got arrested just a day after that last message he sent. He had hitchhiked his way to another state. While there, he would be standing right outside of an elementary school watching the kids. After a few days of this, some parents took notice and were concerned. They reported it to the police, who sent an officer by to check things out. They took him in, questioned him, and while doing a background check on him, found out he was a registered sex offender in another state. He tried saying he was just visiting a friend, but it was found out that while visiting his friend, he took up employment, which made him a resident of that state now. He spent a year in jail, and that's the last I ever heard from, or about him.